Border. Thank you.
So a lot more to talk about. I want to bring in Heather Nauert, State Department spokesperson. Heather, welcome back here to America's Newsroom.
Hi, Bill. Good morning to you.
What more can you add on the Syria raid? I know you're still doing fallout and the reaction 2 days later.
Sure. Well, first, as I hear David Lee Miller talking about how those OPCW inspectors, those chemical weapons inspectors, can't get in because they supposedly need a UN pass to do so is absolutely ridiculous. It's another attempt on the part of the Russians to bolster Bashar al-Assad's regime and prevent weapons inspectors from being able to get in. They need to allow unfettered access to the sites. By the way, Russia has probably already messed with that site and tried to degrade what is at the site right now. But we know that chemical weapons were used once again on Syrian men, women, and children.
Chlorine, not sarin gas, correct? Chlorine?
Well, Bill, we're looking at a couple of things. We have information that leads us to know that there were two types of substances used. Chlorine, information about that, and also information about sarin. We continue to look at it, though, and assess the situation.
Why was there a building even standing in Syria that could help produce chemical weapons today?
Well, let's go back to why the United States and its coalition partners are in Syria to begin with. It's not to fiddle with the civil war that's been taking place there since 2011.
I get it,
the sole purpose
why wasn't this taken out a year ago or even 5 years ago?
Bill, let me answer your question. The sole reason we are there is to take out ISIS. But as we start to see, and the world community watches as Syria kills innocent men, women, and children, backed by Bashar al-Assad, backed by Russia, backed by Iran, the United States and its allies had to act. And so that's exactly what we did. As for the military planners and why they choose certain targets, that's in their lane. I can't comment on that here from the State Department, but I can tell you that we believe we degraded their ability to use chemical weapons to kill
I agree.
people.
I understand the point you're making there. It was just somewhat stunning to me over the weekend to learn that these facilities in at least 3 different locations are still intact today. That point to the side.
Well, Bill, it could be newly learned intelligence. I don't have that information,
I understand.
but I know our people are the best at figuring that out.
What can you tell us about the newest Russian sanctions that are coming today, supposedly?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that the United States sanctioned 2 Russian entities 10 days ago. These are Russian companies that facilitated arms sales to Syria. And that's why we talk about how Russia continues to back Syria, and Russia is partly responsible for what Syria has done to its own people. In terms of other sanctions activity, that's something we're taking a look at. We are always taking a look at that. I'm not going to get ahead of anything that the White House or other departments may announce, but that is something we are looking at. It is a dynamic situation, and we continue to assess it.
What do you make of the Russian response or the lack thereof? Did you expect it to be more aggressive or not?
Well, what do you mean by the Russian response? The Russian rhetorical response?
No,
the rhetorical response is to try to lie and pretend as though they're not involved in this. And they are. We've seen a series of Russian lies at the United Nations and through their disinformation campaigns for many years now. So that comes as no surprise.
Okay. What I was referring to was the lack of a Russian response on the ground in Syria. There was concern before the raid that there could be retaliation, and there was not.
Well, I think Russia's taking notice of the United States' actions. Again, the U.S., the U.K., and France all standing together. You've heard a chorus of countries coming out in support of the actions that the U.S. and her allies took. I think Russia's taking notice of that.
Okay, one more question on Syria here. Did James Mattis win the argument? Go in and lead the strikes for an hour and do not risk the possibility of a wider war?
Well, look, again, this goes back to why we are in Syria to begin with, and that is to defeat ISIS. This incident, what took place, the strike that the United States undertook on Friday night into Saturday morning, was because Syria is using chemical weapons on its own people. That is why we are there. We are not there to force regime change. We are not there for any other reason, and that's why you saw this strike.
Yeah. One last question here. In Turkey, there is a back and forth between our government and the government of Turkey about an American age 50, Andrew Craig Brunson, on trial for alleged terror ties. What can you tell us about his condition and whether or not you can get him released before trial?
Yeah, so you're referring to Pastor Brunson, and he's been held, from my recollection, in Syria for a couple years now. In Turkey for a couple years now. Turkey claiming that he was part of the coup that was attempted a few years back. The coup is something that the United States government does not support, but we do strongly support our pastor Mr. Brunson, an American citizen. We'd like to see him sent home. This trial is ridiculous, and the United States, the State Department has people there who are watching at his trial. Among them, our ambassador for religious issues, Sam Brownback, is there at the trial today.
A lot of ground to cover, and thank you for coming back here today, and we will speak again very soon. Thank you.
Good to see you, Bill. Thanks a lot.
You bet, from the State Department today.